In this Tinkercad tutorial, we are going to review how to emboss, how to etch, how to hole, and we are going to put together our clip design, which has clip art, and our names from Google Drawings. So before we get right into it, I would like to review what those terms mean. So this is etching, or I'm sorry, this is embossing. So as you can see, these letters are raised up. I could feel them. So we have a base that is the wrench, and I brought in Harker Hackerspace from Google Drawings, and that is embossed. When you do embossing, you must use a work plane. We'll review that in a second. We have holing all the way through, and that would be like this, where I hold the word champion all the way through this base. That's simple to do. And this is another good example of embossing. He brought in a clip art of a guitar pick and put J2, which are his initials. And lastly, we're going to go over this, and this is the Ohio State. The Ohio State is not cut all the way through, it is etched in. So we'll review that as well. Let's get to it. Open up your Tinkercad, clip design, and what we have here is your name, the clip art that we brought in last time, and now we're going to put those together. So if you might remember from last time, some clip art pieces or names are not going to stand alone as a base, because when I go to scrape this off of the printer, this is going to fall off. So is that, and so is the mouthpiece. So I need some kind of a base to put underneath it, and I will do that. Same thing with my name. Rarely will you be able to get words or letters that stick together perfectly where they would stand alone. So this is definitely not going to do that. So I want to creatively put this and this together to make some kind of design, and I'll probably put a hole in it so I can hang it up, which is what I usually do. Let me show you an example. I showed you this before, but see how there's a hole in there, and I can hang that on a hook. I needed to put this kind of weird shape in here, and I made it really thin. Okay, so when you emboss something, you really don't need a thick base. This is about 2 or 3 millimeters. And then the part that I embossed, the actual picture, is raised up at least 3 or 4 millimeters. All right, because you don't want to waste material. It takes a long time to print, plus it costs some money. So you want to be careful there. So if you brought in some kind of a base that works as a clip art piece, then you can just forget putting down a random base. So what I'm going to do is work on putting this together. So I am going to put a base down. One thing I love to do is I like to use the polygon for bases, because you can make them all kinds of sides and you can stretch them. So I'll probably use that. But check this out. This is kind of cool. This is what I used for this. I made a unique shape. Let me show you how to do that. I might use it. Who knows? It's called Scribble. It's in basic shapes. You click it, bring it over, and you click down. Okay? All right. And when you do that, this comes up. So you can draw it. You can draw a shape. You can draw lines. And these are the erasers. All right, so the shape closes things in, and that's kind of what I want. If I click this, watch this. Kind of cool. So let's say I needed it to be like really like a wide shape like that. I let go. That's it. It comes out like that. Now that looks goofy. That's not great, but that's kind of what it'll look like. So you can make any shape you want. I push the undo arrow. If I do this pen thing, the thing is it's not going to fill in. It'll just be those lines. When I let go, it's like a hoop. See what I mean? So that's kind of neat. I'm not going to use that, but I just wanted to show it to you because I have used it before. But I am going to, let me backspace that out. I'm going to bring in a polygon. I'm going to put it down. And since these things are going to be embossed on here, I'm going to make this quite thin. So first I'm going to, like I said before, I can make this any amount of sides I want. Let me go with 7. Let's see what that looks like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab an end and kind of make it a unique shape. I actually, yeah, that might work. Okay. So what I'm going to do is make this like 2 because I don't need it to be thick. I just need it to kind of glue this stuff together. Okay, so let me pause for a second. So I really want you to pay attention to the amount of material that you use. I do not want this, any part of this design that you create, to be any more than 75. No more than 75. And I want the total, I mean total height, to be no more than 6 millimeters. So I want you to keep that in mind, and I will put this information in the Google Classroom announcement. But I do not want it any more than 75, and I do not want the height to be more than 6 when it's all said and done. All right, so I can just type this stuff in. I will go 75 to give myself as much as I can. And I think I'm going to try 66 just to, I'm going to go 8 sides. I just do not like that. Let's see what happens. There we go. That looks a lot better. All right, so I need to fit this stuff on here if I am going to emboss it, which my plan is to do that, emboss it. If you're going to emboss, once again, the base should be pretty small. 2 millimeters will be fine. All right. So what I'm going to do is put a work plane down. When you emboss, you need to put a work plane down. All right. So I just need to size this up to fit on here. I've dropped the work plane again. And the thing is, though, when we brought the words in and the clip art, they came in on the bottom work plane. So as you can see, look, they're not raised up. So this is what we have to do. When you import stuff from Google Drawings and from Google, they're going to come in on the lowest work plane. So you click on it and you're looking for, you might have to twist some things around, looking for this black cone. Grab it, raise it up in the air. Might as well do it with the other as well. Now it's floating up, okay? So what we need to do is, as soon as you do that, when you click, since you dropped the new work plane, you click D for drop, and they're both just going to fall down on that plane. Let me click on the other one. You have to select what you're going to drop. D for drop, and now they will sit flat on there. So that's very important. When you're embossing something, you have to use a work plane when you're adding material to other material. So at this point, I'm going to just move this over. And this obviously has to go way smaller. Now, if you want to keep it the same shape, once again, you hold Shift down and it'll lock it into place and keep the same shape, but just make it smaller. Or you could free for all it by not holding the Shift key down. This way you can, oh yeah, that's cool. That's the way you can move it around and reshape it a little bit. So I'm going to do that. I like the way this is looking. I'm going to jam that in there like that. So it's on the base really well. And let me show you this. So I already dropped my name. I want to like get this to fit over here, but it's not oriented correctly. So I will need to shrink it, I assume, but I need to turn it, like this. So you look for these arrows, and oftentimes you do need to move your mouse around, right click and pan. I'm looking for this one. And when you put your mouse over it, it shows you what it'll do. There's a couple ways to do this. See, I can't see it really well. There we go. So you have to move your mouse around. If I click this and just tap it on that arrow, just once, boom. Whoop. Let me do it again. Boom. Okay. So now it kind of is locked into that tool. I can type in right here. Whoa. I could type in the degrees it is if I wanted to turn it 90 degrees or whatever. Or I could grab the arrow, and the farther out you go, the more detailed it'll be. If I put it close in, it chunks like this, like that. But if the farther out you go, the more control you have. So I'm getting closer. All right, I'm going to click the home button I'm getting a little lost here. Okay, there we go. Bring it over here. It's way too big. So what I'm going to do is grab a corner, shrink it up, and get it set on there. Okay, now it's fitting on there pretty well. Do I like the way it looks? I think it's okay. All right, now what I want to do, they're both on the right plane. I'm going to get rid of this work plane, go back to the normal one. W for work plane. Or I can just click up here and then click off into space over here somewhere. Now, when you're doing this at home, you're going to have to pause and rewind, and this is not easy to do the first time. You're going to have to play around with it. So instead of me repeating myself here, just back it up, push play, pause, and work yourself through it. That's just the way it's going to have to be. Okay, so this is all embossed, but as I stated before, I want the total height to be 6 and no more. So I've embossed this. Right now, the words are at 10. The base is 2. That's 12. If I were to group this, it'd be 12. So 2 plus what equals 6? 4. So I need to click on my name first and find the height, and I'm going to go 4. And then do the same with my clip art piece, saxophone, and make that 4. All right, I'm not going to use the alignment tool because I'll just eyeball it. Okay, so I'm going to get a top view. Oh, that looks pretty cool. I love it. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. I might want to tilt my name that way a little bit, so I'm going to click it and move it just a little, like that. All right, so I'm happy with that. I'm going to highlight everything, group it. Now everything is together. Check it out. Now that I've gone over some emboss work, I'm going to show you how I would maybe cut hole through, just to remind you of that, and etching. So what I'm going to do, I think the easiest way is I'm going to duplicate this and then keep this and work with the other thing. So to duplicate, you push Control key down and tap D, and it should make two of them. There it is. I made two of them. So I'm going to put this one aside because I like it. And then I'm going to work with this one. So I'm going to, let me see, I'm going to highlight this whole thing. And I'm going to go up here to ungroup. Now let me talk about ungrouping again. Ungrouping, as I said before, it remembers all of your groupings from the time you started the design. So that could be, shoot, a year or so. It remembers all that. So when I ungroup it, I should be able to activate all these parts again. So I'm going to just quickly do, whoops, let me double click it. They're not separating. Sometimes you have to do this a couple of times. Let me click away. Oh, now it's lagging. Okay, now I can separate these. Okay, now I'm going to drop these down to the bottom work plane because remember I raised them up when I created this other thing. D for drop. I'm going to drop this one to the lowest work plane. All right, so I'm going to pretend like, since I already sized this, if I'm going to hole something through, for instance, I could leave this at 2. That would be fine. It's thick enough. All I would do is make these into holes if I'm going to hole it all the way through. So I'm going to click on this saxophone and click hole. I'm going to click on my name, make it a hole. And now I have to realign them. Now remember, these are, what, 4? So 4 is taller than this base, which is 2. So it's going to be able to cut all the way through, no problem. Or sometimes, anytime I hole something all the way through, I will make it a little bit taller at times. Boy, is it slow working now. Here, hold on. Okay. Sometimes I'll do this, make it a little taller. It doesn't matter. Okay, so I'm going to slide these over and align them like I want them. Remember, they are holes. And since they're on the same work plane, I drop them down. They're cutting all the way through. So to hole this out, all I need to do is group it. Okay, when I group it, it will cut it all the way through. It may not be a good choice to cut all the way through, but there it is. See that? Kind of neat. The problem is, let me analyze this. Since I cut it all the way through, when I peel it off the bed of the printer, this part of the E will go away. It's not attached to anything. This part of the A, so that's not going to look great, unfortunately. The rest will look fine. Okay. Let me push home and show you etching real quick. So I'm going to do the same thing but etch. and go through that. I'm going to duplicate this again, Control D, and peel it apart. Okay. Now, I'm going to ungroup it.
Tracker, I come to bear a gift that's really yours that I'm returning. I'm sure you knew.
Sorry for the interruption. Now I ungrouped it and I have activated everything. So I'm going to etch it. Let me review what that looks like. Remember, etching is just carving in, but not all the way through. So like this, the Ohio State is not all the way through. It's just carved in. So that's what I'm going to do here. So what I'm going to do is pull these away again. Whoops. When you ungroup, it's a good idea to click away and then you can peel things off.
Please excuse this interruption. Teachers.
So now I'm going to go over the etching process with this same thing. And to review what that is, let me make myself bigger here. It is carving in, like in this. The Ohio State is carved in, but not cut all the way through. And sometimes that's a good option instead of holding it all the way through. So I'm going to show you how to do that with the same material here. I'm going to click this and duplicate it, Control D, peel it off, and then I'll just manipulate this. So I'm going to ungroup it and get these things out of here. The saxophone off of there, and Mr. Harker off of there. And remember, this is really important. Let's drop it down. It needs to be on the bottom work plane. All right, when you etch something, you want the base to be thick because you need some material to cut into. So it's really important that you have these things that are going to be cut into it on the bottom work plane the same level as your base. That's important, and that's what we just did. I selected them, click D, and drop it to the bottom work plane. Okay, I'm going to make my base 6 because that was the max that I wanted this to be. So I'm going to click, instead of 2, I'm just going to type in 6 millimeters high. All right, now for these, we're going to make them into holes, the words and letters. All right, make that into a hole, and I'm going to make it extra tall. So I'm going to grab the middle white dot and stretch it up. If you happen to mess up, then push the undo button. So let me click this. Let me show you what I mean. I'll make that into a hole. Let's say I accidentally click this and do this by accident. Whoops, I didn't want to do that. Just click the undo arrow. Whenever you're holing or etching, usually make the hole extra tall. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is just slide this over, kind of line it up, and remember these, when you're etching, you select your hole and you're looking for the 0.00. We're going to raise this up 2 so it goes up into the solid. It bumps up, zip. Same thing with this saxophone I'm going to do. I'm going to select it, try to select it.
Please excuse the interruption.
I'm going to raise this. Oh my gosh. So I've selected my next figure, and you need to find that 0.00, And I want to raise that up as well, too. Bump it up, zip. So now it's raised 2 millimeters into the solid. And now I can group it. Now when you group it, just make sure it's just the things you want to group. I did not want to include these old ones. When I group it, it's going to cut into there. And it just cuts into the solid, and it will show up because it's deep enough. It's 4 millimeters cut in. That looks pretty cool, actually. So that's a review of etching, holing, and embossing. And now I have 3 choices here. All right, until next